What's up, bodyweight warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today I want to chat to you about tight calves because it's one of the main complaints actually that I hear on this channel or just from people in general, and it's a very common restriction that can impact several ranges of motion, so it's worth addressing. To help you out, I wanted to share some drills that you can use, but I'm also going to share with you some tests that you can do beforehand just to see if really the calves actually are an issue for you. So as I said, the calves restrict several things, but primarily we're going to talk today about its relationship in the squat and in our forward fold or our hamstring flexibility. So first of all, the squat. The squat's a bit of an easier one to explain. Essentially, if you have tight ankles, that's probably going to be contributed to from having tight calves. And if our dorsiflexion is tight or limited, it's going to shift more of the torque onto the hips, and we're not going to be able to get those knees far enough forward. So there might be some other funkiness going on. In regards to the hamstrings, well, the hamstrings and the calves are very much intertwined, both across the knee, and actually often when people are doing a hamstring stretch, they're going to feel some of that stretch behind the knee and also in that calf area as well. So in both of these instances, limited range of motion in the calves are going to negatively impact your performance. So let's have a look and see if this is actually true. First of all, let's look at some tests, starting off with the squat. So we're going to test our ankle range of motion. Now this test is actually something that I covered in my can't squat series. I have an entire series on improving squat flexibility from ankles, hips, and also shoulders, which I'll link down below because that's kind of useful. It goes a little bit more in depth than I'm going to go here. But essentially, we're going to set ourselves up, placing our foot a hand width away from a wall or an object that we can touch our knee to. Starting in a lunge position, we're going to shift that knee forward and we're going to try and touch our knee to the wall. Can you touch it? Good, you passed the test. Can you not touch it? Bad, you don't pass the test. You probably need to work on your ankle range of motion or your calf flexibility. If you did pass it, you can also continue to move the foot further from the wall, and you can find out how far you can get before you can't quite touch without letting the heel lift. Second, for the hamstrings, again, a nice simple test here. You're just going to go forward into your forward fold and test where you are. Can you get fingertips to floor? Can you get knuckles to floor? Can you get palms to floor? Take a note of where it's at. You're then going to do a very simple and basic single leg calf stretch for about 45 seconds per side, nothing particularly long, just enough to get a little bit of a stretch. Then you go back to your forward fold, you're going to retest. How does the stretch feel? Has the stretch changed? Has the stretch shifted in terms of where it's feeling it? Have you got an increase of range of motion? If the answer is yes to both of those, then there's probably a little bit of a limitation in the calves as well. Now, I would mention that I would expect to see pretty much everyone see an improvement in their forward fold just by stretching out their calves. I'm looking for more than just a little bit of improvement here. Okay, so the two tests are done. Maybe you need to work on your calves in relation to your forward fold. Maybe you need to work on them in relation to your squat. Let's have a look at the drills. So for the drills, I'm going to give you a structural technique, a neurological technique, and then an integration technique. So how can we use that range of motion that we've developed? First and foremost, we're going to go basic. But basic doesn't mean that it's ineffective. Actually, it just means that it's very simple to apply, which ultimately is kind of what we want. Essentially, we're going to do a calf stretch, but we're not just going to hold a calf stretch for 45 seconds like we did initially. The calves are actually very stubborn muscles. Because they have evolved with us to be on our feet for significant durations throughout the day, doing a lot of work, they're particularly tough muscles. And a lot of that fascia around the lower limb is tough for obvious reasons. So to kind of break this down and work through it, we need to stretch in a way that's going to affect the structure of the muscle tissue. And to do this, that's simply going to involve holding things for a long period of time. So we're going to do that exact same single leg calf stretch, but this time we're going to hold it for 3 minutes per side. Seems like a long time, but it's kind of the time that is needed to really kind of work into this particular stretch. You may want to give yourself some assistance from your non-stretched leg just by taking some weight off that foot. But ultimately, you're just going to sit there, hold it for 3 minutes. You can play around with a little bit of contractions by pressing the toes into the ground or trying to pull the toes up towards you, contracting that anterior tibialis. Now for this one, I would actually recommend doing it 5 to 7 times a week. So that's the first drill. This is something that we would do on a daily basis whenever in the day. It doesn't have to be around training or anything like that. Second, we're going to use a neurological technique. Now this one is more focused on the squat. And to do this, we're going to use something called a fisherman's calf stretch. This one originally is from Emmett Lewis, so shout out to Emmett, learned a lot from him. Ultimately here, we're going to get set up in a very similar position to the original squat test ankle flexibility that we did at the beginning. In this instance though, we're going to place a weight on our knee and then we're going to shift that knee forward. If you're particularly tight in the ankles here, I actually like to do this one with the heel slightly elevated because this shifts the vector of gravity slightly and puts us at a little bit more of an advantageous position to work this one a little bit more aggressively. In this position, we're going to shift that knee as far forward as we can over that front foot without letting the arch collapse or without letting the knee go either side. We're just kind of like trying to get the knee over the toes. When we're in this position, we're going to try and contract that anterior tibialis, that front of the shin. To do this, you can just think about trying to lift the foot, the toes of the feet up towards your knee. Basically, just focus on trying to contract the front of the shin as hard as you can. You can do this as one long contraction for 30 seconds, and over that 30 seconds, you're looking to build up a progressively harder contraction in the front of that shin, and you should also see the knee shift slowly further forward. Alternatively, you can perform this as sort of reps of like 5 to 6 seconds for 5 to 6 reps, where you just contract for 5 to 6 seconds, relax, try to go a little bit deeper, rinse and repeat. Unlike the first one, which is kind of like do it once at any point in the day, this one is the sort of thing that maybe I would use as a warm-up before a lower body session, so we can get that ankle range of motion that we're going to need to do our squats or whatever it is. And I would probably do it for 2 to 3 sets as well. So those are the first 2 drills. Before we get to the integration ones, I would recommend comparing, now after you've given those 2 a go, comparing your results before and after for the 2 tests that I discussed at the beginning. For the squat one, did you see a significant improvement with how far you can get that knee over the toes? For the hamstring one, did you get a significant improvement in how far you can go into that hamstring stretch? I'd be interested to find out. Let me know in the comments section down below. If you didn't, doesn't necessarily mean the drills don't work. It just means that potentially that isn't the missing piece of the puzzle that you need to improve this particular range of motion. Finally, let's talk about integration, because integration is important. You either use it or lose it with flexibility. So we need to consider that when we're trying to develop it as well. So I'm going to give you 2 drills that I particularly like for developing ankle flexibility in relation to squat and then also hamstrings. First of all, we're going to go over the cyclist squat. Now, a cyclist squat is just a traditional weightlifting drill. It is one that's focused on developing the quads. First of all, we're going to set up with our feet about 15 centimeters apart, so a nice narrow stance. We're also then going to elevate the heels so we have our foot at around a 30-degree angle. Kind of similar to how I mentioned beforehand, this is going to put us at a little bit more of an advantageous angle when it comes to using gravity as a vector to get our knees further forward over the toes. And because we have our feet narrow as well, it's going to kind of force the tracking of the patella a little bit more forward and back as opposed to out as it might do to compensate in a normal squat. The focus should be on keeping the torso nice and upright and keeping the movement very vertical, but focusing on letting those knees shift over the toes, especially in that bottom position. Another good option here would be the split squat, which I've actually covered in a whole video by itself, and I've also shared in the original Can't Squat episode. I shared the split squat as the way of integrating things, but I kind of like the cyclist squat. Either or I think would be a good option in this case. Also, before anyone goes accusing me of stealing knees over toes kind of stuff, just look at the date in which I made the original Can't Squat video. I think it was like 3 years ago. This stuff's been around for a while. Second, we have the integration for the hamstring related. Now, this is going to be arguably a lot less fun. And this involves a little modification to an all-time favorite on this channel, which is the Jefferson curl. Jefferson curl is a fantastic way of developing hamstring flexibility, but we have our calves in that neutral position. Now, one that I actually learned from Jeffrey Wolf, or The Flexible on Instagram, I'll link to him down below, is a flexed foot Jefferson curl. Now, in the same way as the side squat, we elevated the heels to change kind of the angle of attack. We're going to elevate the toes in this instance. We're going to raise them. Again, kind of raising them by 30 degrees would be good, but ultimately this one is going to be limited by your range of motion. But even placing something as small as a few centimeters underneath the toes to angle the feet slightly is going to change the stretch dramatically. We're then going to perform the Jefferson curl as per, same old. Just be wary that this one is going to feel not so fun, because it's also going to bring in some nerve related aspects of the sciatic nerve as well. But it's an incredibly good bang for your buck drill when it comes to developing hamstring flexibility. If you want some more details about the Jefferson curl, performing it like specifically, I'll link to my tutorial on that one from a few years ago as well. But that's kind of it. Stretching the calves in 4 ways. We've got the structural, the neurological, and then a couple of integration drills, both of which are going to help develop your calf flexibility in relation to squat and also your hamstring, your forward fold. This is kind of an in-depth video. I think it'll be helpful for a lot of people. As I said, please let me know how you got on comparing those tests before and after. I'd love to hear if you saw a good improvement, significant improvement. If you just enjoyed this video, you can always hit that thumbs up button and support the channel. Right next to it is that subscribe button if you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior tribe. Don't miss out on any more future videos. But that has basically been it for this week, guys. I'll catch you in the next episode. Have a strong week and peace.